with nearly more than 3 million early votes already cast, who exactly are Georgians? Who do they think are going to win at this point?
I think that depends on who you speak to, honestly. I think if you speak to Republicans, they're fairly confident that they're going to win. And if they don't win, I'm sure there's a handful of them that are fresh off of the heels of voter fraud and voter conspiracy. Now, we at GPB, we have not been able to substantiate any of the claims of people saying that there's been widespread voter fraud in Georgia. But I think that if you speak to a lot of Republicans, they would say that they're very confident about their odds going into tomorrow. I think on the same token, there's a lot of progressives across the state who feel very energized coming off of the win in November. So, even if you look at places like 538, the polling is dead even right now. We're really in a dead heat. So it's not an easy sort of prediction to make about which side really does feel more confident, but clearly you get the sense from both sides of the political spectrum that they're both sort of on their A game right now and feeling like they're going into tomorrow with the cards in their favor.
Yeah, it is incredibly tight. The polls are incredibly tight. And what we learned from polls is that we should not be looking at polls.
You speak to interesting points because I think there's a lot of people in Georgia who probably never would have predicted that Georgia would become a blue state or become a blue state in 2020. Where I was born and where I was raised is a part of Georgia called Cobb County. I was raised in a town called Marietta. That was a very conservative part of the state only 10 years ago. Now it votes staunchly Democratic. And it has for the past two elections. They've elected a Democratic representative there who has won twice now in the House. So I think the takeaway from Georgia that maybe other states in the South could see is that there certainly seems to be potentiality for sort of a new progressive movement in the South that many conservatives, many Republicans, many on the right maybe never saw coming.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your perspective. I agree. I completely agree. I lived in Marietta. That's actually where my father lived. And and I think it's because it's this new hip town and you have all these young people and progressives moving in. Because I think that young people like 30s and under are a lot more Democratic in general. And it's just that they literally just either were too young to be voting before, or they just were not super involved in the process. Sure. Didn't believe that they could fight, this world that their parents and grandparents have been ruling over for such a long time. And I mean, we literally are just moving out of that cycle. And people are starting to see the real power that they have if they just get involved. So thank you for everything that you are doing and for being an example.
Of course. I mean, I think that it's just an interesting time to be in the South. I've told people before that Atlanta is not as conservative as I think some people in the rest of the country think it is. It's actually a city that is very heavy in the LGBTQ community. It votes overwhelmingly progressive. It has for decades now. So I think that a lot of people who are really surprised about Georgia voting blue haven't necessarily followed the trends and patterns that someone that's grown up there has seen for a long time. And I'm sure there are similar parallels to Kentucky and other parts of the South where, we're not necessarily surprised that there's this progressive uprising that's happening and that Georgia's turned blue. But, I'm not going to be a pundit here because that's not my role as a journalist, but I will say that I wouldn't be surprised if you saw more Southern states in the next few presidential elections turn blue in the same way that Georgia has in this one.